What is up, Bladers, and welcome back to another Beyblade Journeys TierMaker video. Yes, we are doing another one of these. This time we are going to be ranking and reviewing each episode from the series. I have just watched through all 9 episodes of the footage, so we are now going to be going over every episode and giving them a rank out of 10, as well as a few words of them. I do have a Google Doc over here to my left, so if you see me over here looking to my left, that is what I'm looking at, just to make sure I don't get anything incorrect. With that out of the way, go check out Netflix. He is the creator of Beyblade Journeys, and if you haven't watched Beyblade Journeys, this is your spoiler warning. We will be covering all 9 episodes of Season 1, which will have spoilers for all 9 episodes of Season 1. So, I will give you a few seconds to go ahead and go watch the series. Alright, if you stayed or if you returned, welcome back. We are now going to be getting into this. So, let's start. But before we get on with the video, I would like to take a moment to thank our sponsor, BeysandBricks.com, where you can grab and pre-order the brand new CX16 Deck Starter Set C. You can also pre-order CX15, 14, and 13, either solo or in a 3-pack bundle. These are the new lineups of the new CXE, I believe it's what they are going to be called. So, if you guys are interested in getting the brand new wave of CX Beys or some other amazing stuff, such as the diagnostic tuning tool for balance and optimizing Beyblade parts, go ahead and go over to BeysandBricks.com and use code BAYMASTER16 for 7% off at checkout. Once again, that's BeysandBricks.com. Alright, episode 1, The Bey That Fell from the Sky. Now, I will say this, these are not all the original thumbnails for Beyblade Journeys. Netflix actually went back and took and adjusted some of the thumbnails, and I believe he made them better than what they were originally. So, and of course, if you want to do this tier list, the link to it will be in the description, along with Netflix's playlist for Beyblade Journeys. And if you guys do want to share your made tiers of the previous one plus this one and any future ones to come, share them in Nick's Discord, and him or Lance Kataki will actually take the picture of your tier list, and we have a Discord chat there for everybody's tiers of both the Beyblades and hopefully soon the episode tiers. So, episode 1, The Bey That Fell from the Sky. This is a good setup episode. It is a little bit slow, but that's because it's the first episode of the series. We gotta start slowly pacing. You don't want to just rush full force into it. It introduces us to our MC, Nick, and his Beyblade. It sets up the world, and it shows a little bit of the combat and everything that we're going to see in later episodes. Obviously not at the same level of production as the later episodes, but that is perfectly fine. Honestly, I feel like this episode is a 6 out of 10. So I'm actually going to put episode 1 in A tier. Moving on to episode 2, Before the Team. This is a good follow-up to episode 1. It gives us a few characters, however it is a bit more misleading as they don't really lead to anywhere right now in season 1. It also introduces us to the special move system. That is mainly the takeaway from this episode, is his special moves. However, due to the amount of characters it introduces, and we don't really get to see much from them, I am going to give this episode a 5 out of 10, and it is going to go into rank B. Next episode, now, I tried to make this list non-biased as I could. Next episode is The Rival, which this is a week after Episode 2, it introduces us to ranks and introduces us to the best character, in my opinion, Lance Kataki, while also giving us some backstory to the MC Nick and the world, giving us the introduction of world tournaments. Now, this episode, I feel like, is going to be a 7 out of 10. It is a good setup episode for Lance, and it does progress the main story a little bit through backstories. However, we don't get to see much more other than that, so it is going to be a 7 out of 10, putting it just above episode 1. After that, we get episode 128, or episode 4, the 128. This sets up character loss very nicely, showing us that the loss Nick is feeling from the previous episode is affecting him, and that he's not that overpowered, while also introducing the first main arc of the series, the 128 tournament. And it introduces us to two new characters, Loki and Detective Tim, who is our second best character, or third best, depending on how I feel about Nick. Nick is a good character, don't get me wrong. I just don't know if I like Nick more or Detective Tim more. That is all. Now, other than that, it is another good setup episode, bringing us into the first arc. However, I'm not so sure that it's... What's the word I want to say? It's not bad. It's not bad at all. Although there are things I feel like that could make it better. Now, this is also early on in the series, so of course, production and everything wasn't as good as it was in the later episodes. That is perfectly fine. I'm not going to take that away or add that to any of the other ranks. I just feel like something is missing from this episode, and that is why it is going between episodes 3 and 1. It is getting a rank 7 out of 10. However, it is not ranking higher than the previous episode, just for its backstory lore. Episode 5 of Sky and Cloud brings forth Skylar, our first UX Bay user, as well as the mystery behind the 128 tournament. I believe this was also the episode that gives us the board of Baytuber Easter eggs. It also introduces us to actual powers and abilities via Detective Tim. I do like the editing in this episode, however, that does not affect my actual ranking for this episode. This is also the episode that introduces us to Nick's special move with Phoenix. This episode is going to get an 8 out of 10, putting it in A slot. Top of A slot. Now, moving on, we are going to getting into episode 6, the Dark Resonance Project, or just Dark Resonance Project. This is the first episode to bring forth an actual intro, making the series feel that one step closer to being official in its series. It also brings up the stakes where at the end we do get to see the 128 tournament. Final battle, I believe, is what this is between Nick and Loki. But we did skip a bunch of battles, I feel like. Now, granted, that would have been a bunch of maybe filler episodes for the battles. However, we do get to see Loki's real motive and Nick losing his Phoenix. However, I do believe that skipping ahead of the tournament that quickly may have actually hindered this episode just a little bit. It is still better than some of the other episodes, but it is going to be getting a 7.5 in its rank and going into A tier. I do believe I'm going to put episode 5 in S tier or bring episode 2 down to C tier. I think that's what we'll do. Episode 7, Darkness Awakens. This episode continues where the previous one left off, with Nick and Detective Tim hunting down Phoenix and Loki, bringing them to a fight and Nick getting Oasis Sphinx as a temporary Bey to use. This episode is important to the plotline, however, I feel it is lacking in some places, giving this possibly the lowest rank so far. Nope, it is just above episode 2 at a 5.5 rank. I do believe the episode could have more, but it was just lacking, I feel like. We are getting into the final 2 episodes here with the final showdown, episode 8. Nick and Detective Tim face off against Loki and the new Dark Resonance Phoenix. All hope seems lost until we hear Lance's theme come into play and we see him hit the iconic launch shot. Now, this episode is primarily about Nick and Detective Tim battling Loki for Dark Phoenix. I am going to give this an 8.5 out of 10, making this our first S rank episode. And with that out of the way, we are here to our final episode of Season 1, Phoenix Reborn. The Season 1 finale that ties up all loose ties and gives us the final battle between Loki and Lance. And might I say, some of the best, I don't want to say comebacks, but like, the talking between Loki and Lance is what makes me feel like Lance is my favorite character. And I did talk to Lance, and he was actually based off of Seto Kaiba a little bit. I believe I mentioned this last episode, or last TierMaker video. Sorry, I do apologize if I do sound a little bit weird or quiet. I am currently sick right now, so I'm trying to do some videos while I still can. I probably should have mentioned that at the beginning of the video. So yeah, we get to see the battle between Lance and Loki, and Lance shows off a second special move, showing us that not only you can have more than one special move. With Lance beating Loki, however, we do get a evolved version of Phoenix, Sunrise Phoenix, a completely new Bey, similar to how episode 1 started, where nothing was known about Phoenix. And this is a good setup to an eventual season 2. And I'm going to give episode 9 a 9.5 out of 10. You guys really nailed it with this episode. That has to be my favorite episode by far. And I honestly feel like you guys have done such a great job. Like, you can see the level of writing and editing and production levels increase throughout the episodes. Now, just because episode 7 is lower on the rank doesn't mean that it's a bad episode later in the series. It just feels more filler-ish than official canon. That is all I'm going to say. If it had that one thing more to it, I can't tell you exactly what it was, but if it just had that little bit more, I feel like that would have made it a B tier or even an A tier episode. And in fact, I'm actually going to bring episode 3 up to an A tier just so we have it. But that is my tier for Beyblade Journeys Season 1 episodes. Let me know what you guys think about the rank. And if you guys do make your own ranks, I look forward to seeing them in Nickflix's server. Thank you all so much for watching. Remember, be safe and Bey away. Peace out.